Welcome to Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success podcast, providing business owners, leaders, and entrepreneurs with the 3 INs: insights, inspirations, and intentional actions. Delivered through monologues and dialogues, we address topics like leadership, productivity, time management, work-life balance, and challenges like stress, conflict, mental health, and much more. Please do not hold back from suggesting specific topics and guests you would like on this podcast. Greetings and welcome to this episode of Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success. And this week is one of those weeks where I have a guest on to share with us and talk about mental fitness. So welcome, Howie, and give our audience a little bit an idea of who you are, where you are, what you're doing.
Hey, Mikhail. Thanks for the opportunity to be here and to share. I'm excited. My name's Howie Clare. I live in the beautiful sunny part of New Zealand called Hawke's Bay in Napier, and I the sessions really give me the opportunity just to reflect on me, my life, and who I am. So if somebody asks me, tell me a bit about yourself, I don't like to jump straight into what you do for a living. That's just about the least important thing, I think. But rather, what kind of person are you? So, like you, Mikhail, I'm somebody that likes to help others, and especially if they've got a need, a desperate need, encourage them and show them, how they can get out of where they are. So I've been drawn into those areas of my life and helping people both professionally and in my personal life, and that's fun. It's great to be able to do that. I've got 2 adult sons that have blessed me with 4 beautiful grandchildren, and sorry, 5. What am I talking about? I've got one in Ireland at the moment, so missing them terribly. So, and I'm, hopefully retirement's not too far away. So I'm sort of in an interesting transition in my life. I'm on my own, and that'll come out in my story. So I've got a few freedoms and a few challenges, but I can pretty much, make decisions for myself quite easily. And so it's an exciting time for me. And this is a good time to do the reflection of what's happened in the past to see, what the future might look like for me. So again, thanks for the opportunity.
Oh, thank you, Howard. Thank you for being here. And I really love the word you were using in there, transition, and which is what I always try to encourage people when they say they're going to retire. I say, no, please do not retire. Call it a transition, because you're going to transition from doing one thing into doing something else, and it might be completely different. It might be similar. Doesn't matter. But just please don't retire. So thank you for pointing that out. So let's dive straight into give us a story, or we're going to have a couple of stories from you, Howie, on mental fitness. And I'm always looking for 2 types of stories. One is the one where we end up in some level of trouble or hardship because we didn't quite have high enough mental fitness at the time to deal with the challenges, and then ended up in a not so pleasant place. And then there's the other side where we end up creating successes, and we're doing it despite maybe the challenges and the hardship, but because we have a higher mental fitness to meet those challenges. So I will let you choose what side of the coin you want to stand on, but I would love to hear at least 2 stories, one on either side of that coin.
All right, yeah, this was my homework, and there were lots of things to choose from. So I've settled on two situations where I wasn't mentally fit, and the results followed. The negative results followed. So I thought I'll start with those. I'll keep them short, but you can, you feel free to dig down if you want to go in a bit more detail. So um, the first one is in regard to a bit embarrassing, is in regard to finances. So I had an opportunity that came up in my life to invest some money. And so I thought, this sounds interesting. And it was through my son. And, he said, Dad, look, doing this. Do you know much about cryptocurrency? And so, oh, look, not much, son. So we got talking, and but it was a great time to connect together, and I enjoyed our long conversations about that. And so, I did a bit of study, and I thought I'm jumping into this, and a little alarm bell went off in my head. You know, don't invest money you can't afford to lose. Which, if you think about it, man, that is a really crazy saying because no one likes to lose any money. But you know, uh, I got the idea. And so, um, so I don't know if you know much about cryptocurrency, but there's Bitcoin and then there's everything else. And the everything else coins are called altcoins, alternative altcoins. And so there was an altcoin called Celsius that my son said, hey, look, this looks like this is going to go to the moon, they call it. And you might want to be interested in this. And he was very careful. He didn't want me to do more than I should. But anyway, the long and short of it all is I got very excited. I saw this massive potentials and I jumped in. And over the course of the next 18 months to 2 years, I broke every rule that my rational, logical brain was telling me to do, including don't invest money you can afford to lose, including don't borrow money to invest, and all these things that seem pretty obvious now. I so basically, if there's one fault, I just got too emotional, and it was a combination. It wasn't just greed. It was opportunism. It was excitement. It was adventure. It was all those things, and so I ended up investing more than I should have. I borrowed to invest more, and as you probably guess, it didn't turn out too well. And the whole thing was like a deck of cards. The person who set this up was basically not a nice person. And I didn't lose everything, but I lost was at 95% of my investment. So it was very painful. That wasn't money I could afford to lose. Plus, I had the money I had to repay, and so on and so forth. So that was a very, very painful experience. I felt stupid, and I think deep down inside, the big thing for me was you knew better. It's not like someone took advantage of you and well, there was a little bit of that, but that I'm not laying it at their feet. I had the wherewithal to have avoided this situation and I pretty much deserve everything I got out of it. That was the negative side. And the good thing was, and there's some great lessons in here. So I was able to dissect those lessons. And, in my professional life, I get like you, Mikhail, I get to talk to lots of people and hear their stories. And what's rung true very clearly has been I learned a lot from my successes, but I learned a lot more from my failures. And this particular failure with Celsius was one of those situations. So I did not show mental fitness here. I took a lot of things for granted. I made some assumptions. I was overly optimistic. I've noticed that I'm a very positive person. The downside to that is we can be a little naive and think that there's never going to be any trouble, especially if you get too emotionally invested in it. And that's what happened here. And
Yeah.
I had to get over the embarrassment and shame, although it wasn't public. I mean, apart from my son and a handful of people, I mean, no one else knows about this, but thanks to you, Mikhail, lots of more people are going to know about this. But that was my choice, I guess. And yeah, I'm a better person for it. And I suppose the financial cost, if I put a dollar sum on that, yeah, that learning was probably worth that, especially if I apply that properly throughout the rest of my life. Um, yeah, that's a lesson well learned. No one died. That's another saying of mine. Hey, look, no one died here. So, you lost a few bucks. You got some learnings from it. And I should say there was a bit of good news. I did invest in Bitcoin, and any of you crypto fans out there, you know that man, that is doing so well. So it has propelled me forward in that way. But this loss with Celsius was painful, but great learning. So yeah, the big lesson for me there was just don't don't just follow your emotions, you know,
Yeah.
put that rational cap back on. So that
Yeah.
was the first story I wanted to share with you.
Very
Just
good
what
point. Very good point. And thank you for sharing that, Howie. And yes, we all know that, don't we? Um, I'm sure our audience can nod to this as well, is that some of the most valuable learnings we have are often the most expensive ones. So and it's just one other thing that you shared in there that I just wanted to piggyback off. And that, like, I have a little drawing where I sort of have two arrows, an arrow going up and an arrow going down. And when emotions go up, common sense goes down. So that's, and you said it pretty much in those words. So your emotions at that moment took over, and therefore your common sense sort of got out the window, and you ended up doing things that if the emotion hadn't been that intense. So the trick here, from a mental fitness point of view, when we recognize that, is then to have some exercises where we can reduce that. We don't have to take it away, but just reduce that emotional intensity so that the common sense can come back in and we can go, okay, yes, I am going to go ahead and invest in this, or no, maybe I will invest a little bit less, or maybe I won't. So, I mean, I burned myself. While the first money I invested in cryptocurrency, I lost a lot. So, I think there's probably a lot of people here who can relate to that in some way or other. And good to hear that you got in with Bitcoin. So, you said you had another story, a quick little story?
Yeah, yeah, I do. So, yeah, financial loss is one thing. At least you can kind of recoup that. My next one, not so much. It was a huge emotional loss, and that was my marriage. It was my second marriage, and I thought I'm going to get it right this time, and married a great lady, and you know her, Mikhail, and you know she's lovely, and nobody doesn't like her and love her. So, and we were married for 12 years, and things were great, you know, and I was able to focus on other things and business and so on and so forth. And it was nice going home every night and you know, there she was and we'd have lots of fun and share and all those sorts of things and seemed very compatible. And then I had to fly off to Auckland so I was living in Napier. I had to fly off to Auckland for a personal thing for a trip. I was going to be away for the week, and one day into that trip, I got a text. I need to talk to you, and so we teed up a time, and I was sitting in my car, and she started talking. She said, "I've moved out of the house. I've been struggling, and so yeah, so I've moved out." And I thought, "Oh man." She needs some time out. Gosh, this is a bit of a surprise to me. Yeah, she obviously needs some space, so that's okay. And the more I got talking to her, the more I realized, yeah, she had moved out permanently. She had spent the last day, and obviously, you know, all the planning that went into that, packing up her half of all our stuff, and moved out. And she made it clear she didn't have any intention of moving back in either. And so I was blindsided. This was devastating to me, obviously. I didn't even know we had any problems. We didn't argue. I mean, maybe two or three times we had a few words. That was about it. It's not like all the warning signs were there, or maybe I'm just stupid. I don't know. I don't know. But I'd certainly had no idea that things were as bad as they obviously were from her point of view. I was happy in the marriage. I'm not saying things couldn't have been better and whatever, but you know, certainly if somebody said, "Do you have a strong marriage?" I would have said yes. We're both Christians, so there are certain covenants and agreements you make, and it's for life. So this was a big surprise to me. The way it was done, no notice, I'm out of town. It was just very, very difficult. So, you know, my plan was to get back to Hawke's Bay pretty quickly. So I cancelled all my plans and grabbed a flight back. And look, I'll be able to win her back and talk her through this and help her see reason and things like that. Uh, I didn't know that modern feminism has a new strategy for dealing with situations like this, and it's called no contact. And it's actually very cruel. And so the other person, and it's typically the woman, I've noticed, adopts this approach of no contact. We're not going to talk, and you're not going to try and influence me and get me to change my mind. And that's what's happened. And I never got to speak to her again. So we went from what I thought was a happy marriage to I mean, it just so happened we managed to bang into each other a couple of times on the street, but that was just in passing. That there was no sit down, no discussion, or anything like that. Everything was done through lawyers after that point, and I never got my day in court, if you like, in terms of being able to ask her questions and reason through and seek forgiveness and any of those things. And that was really, really tough. And somebody said to me, a friend of mine said, "Gosh, it's like you've suffered a death." And I said, "No, it's much worse than that." And they said, "Well, what do you mean?" I said, "Well, if your spouse dies, that's terrible, but at least they loved you. You
Mhm.
know, mine didn't die. She voluntarily left. And get this is going to sound crazy. It wasn't for another fella. You know, what do I mean by that? Well, she would sooner be on her own than carry on living with me. And that was, yeah, if she left me for another guy, okay, the grass is always greener sort of thing. But yeah, she left me to go and live on her own. And that was, yeah, that was really hard. And so, but the fact that I couldn't talk to her and try and work through it, as Christians, we're called to reconcile in these situations, to forgive. And that's not a free pass. I mean, the other person still has to put in the work, which I was very much willing to do. What's my part in this? And if you were unhappy, how can I do my part to make sure that I'm not contributing towards that? But I never got that chance. So, I never hated her for what she did. I was never bitter or resentful. I was definitely very sad and I was grieving. It took me many years. Actually, I didn't eat for a week in that time. I lost 7 kgs in 1 week. It's a great weight loss plan, but it's not great. Um, but, so I was devastated. It took me over a year before I slept through the night to have a one. So, this was really the most tragic thing that ever happened to me. The only thing that came close to this was the loss of my mother, and it was 10 times worse than that. So, yeah, it was very devastating. So it wasn't just the loss. Oh, the other thing too, if you lose somebody through death, you know, it's tragic and you don't get to see them again. In my case, though, I would drive around town and I wasn't sure if I would bang into her or see her. And that was all, let alone see her holding hands with another guy. So I had all those sorts of things to deal with. And I think, I don't mean to make light of people who have lost someone, but, this was as bad, if not worse than that. And so, um, mental fitness, in this case, mental unfitness. What's going on here? Well, I certainly took things for granted. I'd made assumptions that everything was rosy. I'm not saying I was a totally neglectful husband. Um, there were some pretty awesome things I think I did as a husband, but obviously not enough. But I was certainly neglectful and assumed that things were better than they were. I was a little lazy in some areas. I underestimated the effect of certain things in our relationship. And if somebody just asked me, what would you have done differently? That's a real tough one because that makes it sound like I'm the only one involved. The fact is, there's somebody else involved. So I would have probably talked more with her and listened to her more. Um, but I can't guarantee she would have spoken. She was a very non-confrontational, is a non-confrontational person. She doesn't like to argue. And so she's very proud. So she doesn't like airing her dirty laundry. And so I may have done all those things and she still didn't open up to me. And so she decided to deal with it in her way without involving me behind my back. I suspect she was, speaking to other people, friends and family, and getting their advice, which, boy, that hurts, to know that they're talking, people are talking about you like this, and the one person she should have been talking to, she wasn't. So, and please don't get me wrong here. I'm not judging her or condemning her for that. She did what she thought was right, and I respect that. It's not how I would have dealt with it, but that's the way she felt she needed to deal with it. Um, and that's her right and her privilege.
Thank you for
But
honoring. Thank you for honoring her for that. And also, thank you for your openness and honesty and coming in a kind of a public forum like this and sharing that. I really appreciate that. And as we said with the other story, um, our learnings are often financially expensive. On the other side, the other learnings that we are having can also be really emotionally expensive. So, as you said, this is one of the toughest things because of the number of reasons you mentioned, which is a lot of that is the unknown. And that really again comes into it's a different level of mental fitness than the way we normally talk about it. So I just wanted to share a couple of things around that because this normally doesn't come up like this. A part of mental fitness is the ability to be really present and conscious with what it is that is going on around us. And by the sound of it, that was lacking for you. So you didn't pick up the signals that I'm sure were there, but were too subtle to pick up. And therefore it felt like, oh, everything is fine until suddenly it's not fine at all. So that's another reason for me, for us as human beings, to continuously grow our mental fitness, so we become better at spotting those moments, whether it's in business, whether it's in relationships, whether it's in parenting, whether it's with anything else. So thank you so much for your openness with that story. Now let's flip the coin and hear a story about a place where mental fitness was present for you and that allowed you to achieve things that you otherwise wouldn't have been able to.
yeah, okay, let's do that. So I want to go back to when I was it 12 years old? 12 years old when I went to university, university, when I went to high school. And so my birthday's in June. So yeah, I was 12 and a half when I started third form at Gisborne Boys High. And I was a very average student. I was average height. I was pretty much an average person, average kid. And but I remember when I was down, I was actually ironically outside the library, the school library, and I made this decision. The switch went off in my head, and I said to myself, I'm not going to be average anymore. I'm at high school. The time for mucking around and cruising is over. Man, if I want to do something with my life, I am going to put in the work and I'm going to go for it here. And so, I mean, I literally didn't say those words to myself, but that was definitely what went on in my head. That, look, the time for muck around's over. Let's get stuck into this high school thing. And so I use this story because I've done this several times in my life, and incredible things have happened as a result of it. And that's where I've been um, mentally fit in that state. So I went from an average student to 5 years later, I was ducked out of the school. Um, I was a product of a broken home. I was living in a caravan with my mother and my brother. So uh, I had lots of things against me, and yet I kind of managed to push through all that and go on. And I loved high school. I had just the best time, and I connected with guys that were like-minded. They wanted to succeed. I was playing soccer, and I went from an okay player to a really good player, and I become, captain of the first 11. And oh, I don't know if this is related, Macau, but 6'2" by the end of high school. I just shot up. So all these things were just so incredible in my life. And so but just that whole idea of taking control of my life and deciding I am not going to settle for this. I want good things to happen. And so I worked hard. So mental fitness to me, what were the fruits? What was the sign that I was mentally fit at this time? Well, I had a laser focus on success. I got around the right people. I was drawn away from negative people or people who didn't want to work hard and study hard. I developed good habits in regard to my study and my sport. I resisted things that were going to take me away from that. So, yeah, I went to parties, of course, as a teenager, but I only get I didn't do anything silly, no drugs, didn't smoke. That was inconsistent with what I wanted to achieve. Um, my confidence levels just grew and grew. I backed myself. I took risks that I hadn't previously taken, and I was doing things that build success, and I was avoiding the things that didn't. And there was somebody else in my life. I'm not going to mention who they were, but there was somebody else in my life that did just the opposite of, well, not the opposite, but they didn't go take the negative route. They took the neutral route. So they just cruised and they didn't take risks, and yeah, they took a very different path to me and didn't enjoy the successes and rewards that I ended up receiving. And they were actually quite resentful about me, for me achieving that success, but they weren't willing to pay that price. And again, I'm not condemning them, I'm not judging them. I'm just saying that's the difference. I could have been in that same situation had I decided not to move forward the way I did. So I've had this switch in my head to say, I don't want to settle for that. I want to go for that several times in my life. And but that was my first vivid memory of when I did that at the age of 12, which was pretty cool.
Very, very cool. And thank you for stepping all the way back to that early in your life and finding an example from that early. And I really love that. And one key thing in that for me, because you explained it perfectly well yourself, around mental fitness is taking risks. You said these other people that took the average road were not taking risks. And if we want to create success and deep happiness and fulfillment in our life, it is not going to happen without taking risks. That's just the way it is. And I have plenty of stories in my own life about that. And my language is often I'll just jump off the cliff and then I'll figure out how to build a parachute on the way down, kind of thing. And it's in that I've had some of the biggest learnings and growth in my life. And that takes a certain level of mental fitness to be able to do that. Have you got another story? Another story?
Okay, can I just jump in as you're talking about taking risks? So let me tell you about this really strange and crazy guy I met once, and he asked me to take a risk. He says, "See, there's an arrow, the pointy bit at the end. I want you to put it on a part of your body you probably don't want to put it." And it was the second most place I didn't want to put it, and it was right there in my throat. And he asked me to put this arrow at my throat and put it the other end against the wall. And he said, "Now step forward and snap the arrow." And of course, that crazy person is you, Mikhail. And and the way you'd built it up, because I knew this was coming. And but again, that was another example where Howie was given an opportunity to get outside his comfort zone, take this massive risk, not a blind risk, all right? Because I know the rational part of my mind when we did the arrow snapping was, well, hang on, this guy, I mean, I think he likes me, and he's done this before. So, there was
He's
trust.
not in
So,
prison yet,
what's that?
and
Oh,
he's
he's
not
not in
in prison
prison. Yeah,
yet.
yeah, no, exactly. We never did the firewalking, mind you, but that might be a different thing. But, there was a rational part of me that said, look, this appears scary, but it's probably not as bad as it appears. You may remember, Mikhail, because we had several others, about a dozen people there. I didn't get up, and I wasn't the first one. So, kudos to that woman, I think it was, that got up first and did it. Man, I thought she was so brave. But when I saw a couple of people try it, I thought, oh, okay, yeah, some broke it, some didn't. So I did do a wee bit of due diligence, if you like. And so it wasn't blind faith, but I was really backing myself rather than anything else. The question wasn't, is this safe? Um, the question was, is how he got the fortitude and the courage to face this fear, whatever the size of it really is, as opposed to as it appears. Has he got the wherewithal to just step forward? And I guess if you never asked me this question, but Howie, what made you step forward? You know what it was? It was the fear of not stepping forward. And then to have sat back down, and a couple of people didn't snap the arrow, and they had to sit back. The look of defeat on their face, as comforting as you were with those people, I just didn't want to be one of them. And I thought, I'm not going to do that, man. I'm stepping forward. And I did, and I snapped it. And, as my reward 6 months later, you got me to do that with a steel rod of all blimmin' things. It's a wonderful thing. I've achieved some incredible things in my life, taken some amazing risks, and pushed through and done things that most people can't. And it's because I've trusted myself based on past successes and failures. I've associated myself with good people like you, who are trustworthy and have integrity. They've held my hand. You mentioned about jumping off the cliff. I would never jump off a cliff, but I would jump off a diving board, and then I would jump off a higher diving board, and so I would do that. I'm not completely crazy, but I know there is a part of me that, man, if somebody else struggles to do this, I kind of think that would be pretty cool if I could do that. And so, as you know, another example of that for me is, man, I'm going to do this. This is scary. This is actually probably the scariest thing I've ever done in my life, but I'm going to do this because I know not many people can do this. And it was write my first book. Um, it's one thing to share your knowledge with somebody one on one or verbally. There's no record of that. But when you put it down in writing and you publish it and it's out there in the world, that takes courage, because if you've made a mistake or you've got it wrong, you look foolish. It's for everybody to see. So, I was really proud when I finished my first book and published it, and a bit like the diving board analogy, I just kept going up and up and up, and ended up becoming a ghostwriter. And what am I at the moment? 27 books behind me, and I've got four in process at the moment, in work in progress. And um, that's pretty cool to be able to do that. And but it took me to take a risk, back myself, be willing to fail, whatever failure means to somebody. Be willing to endure the criticism and condemnation of others, the judgment of others, which, you know, I'm like most people. I don't like people pointing out my failures in a cruel way. Um, my coaching sessions with you, Mikhail, uh, you know, you, there are times when you had to tell me things yeah, yeah, that was hard to hear, but it was necessary to hear. That's why I got you involved. So, I don't like having cheerleaders around me all the time. I do appreciate it. Good, smart, wise people telling me, Howie, you really need to improve in this area. And I'll just finish this little segment by one little story of that. When my wife left me and my life was shattered, and it was clear it wasn't going to be retrieved. Wasn't going to get my wife back. Um, my brother said to me, Howie, I feel really bad. I said, why? He said, because I should have told you about some of the things I saw, some of the things I heard you say to her, and all these sorts of things. I felt like getting my hands are just throttling him. Why didn't you tell me? And of course, I understand why that's not always easy to do that. But so I make a point of surrounding myself with not loads, just a select few, good people that I trust, who are wise, who have got experiences that can help me, and I invest in those relationships and allow them to talk to me, counsel me, give me advice. I specifically ask them that if you see something that you think is not right, whatever, I want you to tell me. You're not going to hurt me. In fact, you're going to hurt me if you say nothing. And I feel good that I'm able to do that. And of course, sometimes we have to pay people to do that, and I've done that too, business coaches and whatever. But that's certainly a good piece of advice I would give to others is, man, you got to put your pride aside sometimes and find the right people and give them license to speak into your life and listen carefully. You don't have to accept what they say, but it's gosh, sorry, I thought I'd muted that. And actually, start again. And so surround yourself by people and give them the license to be able to speak into your life. And it's highly unlikely that what they've got to say is 100% wrong. It may not be 100% right, but there's probably some truth in it. And you might be well advised to have accepted that. One person did share something with me about an interaction I had with my wife, and this woman was there at lunch with us, and she told me, uh, what she was feeling at the time, and boy, was I humbled. And I said to her, look, I I feel really, really humbled by that, and feel a bit silly, really, that I couldn't see what you saw. And had I done that, maybe things would have been a whole lot different. Maybe they wouldn't have. I don't know. But, one thing about me is I don't live with regrets. I would do it differently if I had the chance again, but I can't do that. I don't have a time machine. And I have to just take the positive learnings from it and try your best not to make that mistake again. And so, yeah, which is a bit interesting when it comes to marriage.
Mm.
I love being married, but so a friend of mine said, "Well, do you think you get married again?" I said, oh wow, well, I've had two divorces behind me. I don't know about that. And hey, look, there are lots of advantages to being, on your own. And do I want to inflict this on another woman? I don't know, but hey,
Maybe
look,
you'll be more mentally fit with the next one, and it will be a different, and it will be a different
yeah,
story.
and I don't have to put a ring on all their fingers, right? And I've got some women I'm very good friends with, so I get to have all the non-physical advantages of having female relationships. So because they have, women have unique perspectives, and there's so many awesome things about them. But then same with my male friends, the blokes I know, they've got all their things they add to my life, and I'm able to add to theirs. So yeah, that's life's interesting, and these painful things come along. But good things came out of all my difficult situations in my life, including my divorce, and I got to it drove me towards meeting a great new group of friends. And yeah, well, life's pretty good at the moment. But yeah, I'm not taking things for granted anymore. One thing that's been constant in my life is, man, I've just got to improve every day. What can I do? I love to set goals. How am I advancing my goals today? And yeah, that keeps me busy. And yeah.
Yeah, like just one point there I wanted to, because again, you now brought up an other aspect of mental fitness that we haven't talked about in any of the previous episodes, and that is that of asking for help. That takes mental fitness. So the more mentally fit we are, the easier it is for us to actually ask for help in areas where we know and can feel quite clearly that, okay, I'm lacking some stuff here, or there's something happening here. I can't put my finger on it, but I will just go and ask somebody else what they are seeing. So that can be just, it could be friends and that, but I'm talking more in a professional sense where you go out and look up people, whether it's having a session with somebody about cryptocurrencies, for example, or some business aspects of things that, AI, you want to smarten up on that, for example, or getting a coach on board. So, thank you for mentioning the arrow because you were one of my first clients when I started working with business people about 17 years ago when I lived back in Hawke's Bay where you are now. So we go back a very, very long time. And I think when we connected a little while ago, there was like 8 years that we hadn't talked at all. One thing I really love with the work that I'm doing is of course that of supporting other people, but also kind of the friendships that a lot of my clients end up in that place where the coaching has stopped, but the connection is still there, and we'll catch up for coffees maybe, or these days on Zoom. And yes, that arrow, it's a fantastic tool when firewalking is not available. So I like to challenge my clients in different ways because that's again where any lack of mental fitness shows up. And through that awareness, there's then the opportunity to go, okay, so what do I need to do with that? And thank you for already kind of answering my next question, and I'll ask you just to maybe add one or two more things. It's around tools and ways that you have built your mental fitness, and you've already shared some of that with us, and particularly uh, you got to step out there and wanting to learn and being vulnerable, being willing to be told that, hey, the way you were treating your wife is probably not the best way to treat a wife. And be able to hear that and go, okay, I don't like hearing that. I don't like hearing those things either. But again, with mental fitness, we can go, it's okay that I don't like being told. It's what I do with it next. And that's again the mental fitness being willing to hear and then put into action some changes. So, can you share a quick little tool with us that you have used either years ago or recently or over a period of time to help you grow your mental fitness?
Sure, sure. Um, well, first of all, there's a book I think people, obviously I'm a Christian, the Bible's a great book to read, but this is not a church service. So there's a great book to read, and that's How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. I'm fully qualified coach with the facilitator with Dale Carnegie. That was a life-changing book for me. Very easy to read, changed the lives of many, many people. In fact, I would say this as a challenge. If you haven't read that book and you knew it was out there, why haven't you? You know, it's that good. So I'd be doing that. Second one is get a coach. Don't be scared to have somebody to help you along the way. The word coach is the same origin comes from as in stagecoach. So a stagecoach gets you from one place to another in the quickest time with the least level of work and discomfort. And that is what a good coach will do. So, and you know, you're one of the great coaches I've had, Mikhail. You've helped me, and I like to coach others. So get a coach. Don't be put off by costs. That's the other thing too. I know it's a barrier for a lot of people. Gosh, they charge a lot of money, and I love this quote by Red Adair. And if you think hiring a professional is expensive, try using an amateur. And
I love that.
yeah, and of course, the amateur we tend to employ most of the time is ourselves. So, you know, why would you do that? I take my car to a mechanic because if I try and work on it, I'm going to create all sorts of problems and it's going to take me a lot longer. So, you know, that's wisdom and humility, putting aside your pride and hiring a coach. And the last thing is, you know, if there was a superpower that you wanted, you know, what would it be? Well, this would certainly be on my top 10 list. The ability to set and achieve meaningful goals. So, goal setting is such an important thing. And so, every now and again, I have a list of my goals, and I start off with a sentence, and it says, "This year will be a great year." You know, you can decide when a year starts, whether it's the 1st of January or whenever. This year is going to be a great year when I've achieved the following things. And then I'll write down anything from 3 to 12, let's say, things, milestones. Man, this would be a great year. If I could achieve all these 12 things, this would be a great year. And then maybe 18 months later, I'll find this document and I'll go back and go, oh, okay, let's do a scorecard here. How did you go? And I cross it. Oh gosh, I did that. I did that. I did that. Didn't do that. Partially did that. I did that. And then I look back and go, wow, actually, I did have a really good year. I didn't nail all these things, but I nailed seven of them. I progressed two of them, and those other three, well, one of them wasn't really relevant anymore, and the other two I'm still working on. So that was a pretty good year. So this is, it comes under the banner for me of living a more intentional life, a more deliberate life. You're living life on your terms. It's not being dictated to you by your circumstances or other people. So the ability to set and achieve meaningful goals, making progress every day on some aspect of those goals, you're leading a deliberate life. That is so empowering. It builds your confidence. And you're not going to I call it sitting on the porch as an old man in your rocking chair, what did I do with my life? Uh, if you've knocked off these things that you wanted to do, then you've lived a good life. But if you're sitting on there going, I've done nothing with my life, I've really just lived day to day, um, it's up to you.
I
Some
love
others
that.
might find happiness in that, but not me. That would not be very fulfilling. So,
Yeah. Oh, thank you for pointing that out, and thank you there. Like you mentioned quite a number of tools today, and the book and things we talked about earlier. And I like the way that you started that sentence with, this is going to be a great year when I have, and I think in part of that, I prefer calling it setting intentions. I don't like the word goals. You like the word goals. That's all good. For me, it's like setting the intention, putting that intention into our minds, and then allow that to percolate. And then coming back to it later, oh yeah, wow, I did that, I did that, that. So thank you for that. So to finish off today, I'd like to ask my guest one final question, the same question to everyone. Is just give us a short little story of a transformation, like whatever transformation means to you. So not just a mere change, but something that actually turned your world upside down or around, or an awakening moment in your life. Have you got a story there you're happy to share with us?
yeah, one thing I've noticed many things about you, Mikhail. One thing is you're very deliberate with your words. And so, what do you mean by that word? And, you've done that now with transformation. So, for me, a transformation is I'm just not the same person I was. I've actually changed who I am, which is usually a summation of your beliefs. You've had a paradigm shift. That's in other words, Stephen Covey has used that. And so I've already mentioned a couple to you. So one is high school. I went from being basically a kid to an adult. I had an adult mind in me. There was a transformation in that moment. My wife leaving me, I was transformed. I went from being quite lazy in my relationships and assuming things to no, I've taken things for granted. I'm not going to do that again. So, uh, there was a transformation. But how can I not say this? As a Christian, a follower of Jesus Christ, that is the biggest transformation in my life. And it wasn't in a moment. It's been a process, and it's ongoing. But my decision to follow Jesus is about moving. And I don't want to upset or offend anybody out there, but I'm sure you can relate to this. Is that I went from a guy that was thinking about himself and being selfish and how can I get what I want, to God wants me to be a blessing to other people and to be a good ambassador for Him on this life, in this life, and this life isn't everything because there's another life ahead, but you are putting the work in now. And what do you want that scorecard to be? And so that's allowed me to put my pride aside, my selfishness, and want to help other people and to share and to be compassionate, people who are struggling and to just sit with them in their pain and their loss. I'm doing that at the moment with somebody, and boy, it's such a privilege. It's so wonderful. I know, Mikhail, you know that too. You love being, man, if I can be a conduit, if I can encourage you, if I can help you in some way, that would bring me so much joy. I'm not doing it for me, I'm doing it for you, but we can both win out of this. it's a beautiful thing. So, when you're a young kid, when you're a young boy, you don't think like that, and it's something I've had to move into. And so my decision to follow Jesus was that big transformation. This is not about you. This is about something much bigger than you.
So, so
And the
beautiful.
the world needs people like that. And what a wonderful place it would be if people weren't so selfish and thinking about. Now, don't get me wrong. I have many moments every day where I do, I'm guilty of being selfish and things like that. But I tend not to wallow in that, blame others, feel sorry for myself. I'll do that for a little while, but pretty much I'll dust myself off and it's time to kick on and start leading that more deliberate life and helping others on the way. And it's a great way to live.
Yeah, absolutely beautiful, Howie. Thank you for that. And what I've discovered over the years, many years now of coaching others and really getting into the depth of what those people really, what is it really you want in your life? Once we get rid of the things that people think that they want and into it,
Mhm.
every single time it comes down to a part of their life have to be about being of service. And whether that's service through religion or service through finance or business or friendships or parenting or husband and wife and all of that. It seems to be, to me, ingrained into our being. Again, no, God might have just installed that into our DNA is that the birds fly. They don't need to think, should I fly or should I not fly? They just fly, and all different species do whatever they're programmed to do by nature or by God. And I don't, for me, we are not different to all of that. We are also a part
Mm,
of the ecosystem, and we have also been programmed to, walk on 2 feet and eat this way and so on. And within that programming into to be a service to feed the tribe that you're in, whether the tribe is out in the jungle or whether it's in a big inner city. Like we still want to belong and we still want to serve. So thank you for sharing that, and thank you for coming on to today and share these wonderful, like really very inspiring stories. I hope our audience here today will take things away from this, and I'll make sure to pop your contact details in because somebody might want to just have a chat with you um, and hear a bit more about that. So, any last words to our audience before we finish up today?
Well, thanks for that last comment. Yeah, you're quite right. I mean, this shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, but if there is somebody out there that would like to chat, I mean, I couldn't think of much better way to spend time is just sitting with somebody and just hearing their story. And again, if I can help them. So if there's anybody out there that feels that I could add some value, then yeah, I'd be more than happy to do that. No, thanks again for your. Okay, you mentioned one point there about, has God given us this desire and want to help one another? And clearly, I believe that's the case. But He also allows us to make contrary decisions to that, to be selfish, and to wreak havoc and to hurt others. And He doesn't want us to do that, but He's given us that free will. And sadly, too many people they go that way. So, but I made that decision, that conscious decision. I want to go the other way, and
Yeah.
for
And
me, it's a far more contented and happy life to live it that way. So, mate,
absolutely.
I gotta say something. You are a great guy. If I'm on my rocking chair and think who are all the great people I've met in my life, you'd certainly be on that list. And thank you for that. Thank you for all the work you do for me and for others. And we had those 8 years of silence, not deliberately, just got busy. But I'm glad we're reconnected, and this wouldn't have happened if I hadn't have picked up the phone and contacted you. So yeah, and good luck with all your great work you've got coming up. You've got some great projects. So yeah, that sounds exciting.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success. If you have stories of how mental fitness has benefited you that you are happy to share, go to my website, mikael.nz, click on podcast and fill in the guest application form. If you want direct support from me utilizing my 40 years of mental fitness learning and practice, email me at coach@mikael.nz or message me on LinkedIn. Any feedback, review, share, follow, like, or any other good stuff is, of course, appreciated. Thank you for listening to Mental Fitness, the Gateway to Success podcast. I'm your host, Mikael Nelson.